Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Day in the Future. Today we're going to be discussing Romanian innovation, and we're going to be discussing it with one of the inspiring leaders in the current political scene in Romania. Previous graduate of Harvard and Stanford, founder of the League of Romanian Students Abroad, member of the parliament since 2020, previous Minister of Digitalization, Innovation and Research, and current Minister of Energy. Today we're going to be discussing with Sebastian Burduja. I'm really excited about what we're going to be learning about innovation in Romania today. So let's find out. Sebastian, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
I was looking for this conversation for a while. So
Me too.
Happy to do it. So we're going to start by learning to know who Sebastian is, like from a personal standpoint. Who is Sebastian? Where does your energy come from? And usually, in my case, energy comes from inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like you to go into that a bit before we start off discussing about innovation in Romania.
I think my deepest creed is that life is not about what happens to you, but how you give it meaning and, in general, responsibility. So I think that you have to live every moment of your life with the perspective of the last moment you have on earth. The last time you put your head on the pillow, and for sure we're going to look back and ask ourselves, did we give more to this world than we took away from it? And I think it's the answer to that question that has to give this sense of meaning to our life. And it's not an easy burden to carry, but I think if you don't have that perspective, then you kind of just waste time and maybe chase after happiness. But I think happiness comes indeed from having that sense of responsibility and accomplishing it. So I've tried to live my life with that perspective, and I have my own role models. I have 3 kids at home, and they're certainly my most important role models, and I learn from them every day. Plus a range of people that I've been fortunate enough to meet along the way, and they also provide me with a source of inspiration and guidance and energy. Plus I'm the Minister of Energy, so if anybody's going to have it, I have to lead by example.
What ignited your mission? Because it's a powerful one.
I think the idea of public service is to indeed serve the public. And I think politics is not about those who serve, it is about those who are to be served. And if you think about the equation I mentioned earlier, did I give more to the world than I took away? Then I think a reasonable goal for one's life is to try to affect in a positive way as many people as possible. And I think that, at least in Romania now, there's no other better way to affect the lives of millions than through public service. You can build an amazing company, and many Romanians have. You can build a wonderful NGO, and many Romanians have. But at the end of the day, the resources, the impact, the implications of public work, of politics essentially, is unrivaled by any other option. And why Romania, I think it's clear that at least from my own perspective, it provides me with the greatest sense of satisfaction. I've worked at the World Bank for other countries. I've worked in management consulting before for other governments or the G20 or the UN. But in none of that have I had the kind of satisfaction that I've had working for my country. It's where my roots are. And I think it's important to have that sense of fulfillment, of personal accomplishment every single day. That's what can really drive you forward, gets you up in the morning and
have the energy to be the Minister of Energy.
Yeah, exactly.
What are some role models? You've mentioned role models, but what are some innovators in the history of Romania, or some innovations that come to mind in your case? Because we will discuss the past, the present, and the future briefly together today.
As former Minister of Research, Innovation and Digitalization, I've often asked myself that, and probably the most prominent example is Henri Coandă. I think he is the Romanian that has shaped modern transport technology through the jet engine, the invention of the jet engine, the discovery of the Coandă effect, but also the exploration of new technologies that haven't even come to be commercialized yet, which is such as Hyperloop. And I know there's a few Romanians, I recommend them for future editions of this show, who are working on it and trying to make it commercial. But certainly he's played a big role in the history of humanity's innovation. But there's others too. In oil and gas, we're one of the leaders of the world since, more than a century ago. We've had the first official recorded production of oil in the world. Romania did.
Oh my God!
And
okay, didn't know about it.
Yeah, and several other world records that we've held since the 19th century, including some of the first drilling for gas, some of the first compression station for gas. Anyway, if you read the history, it's truly remarkable.
So, besides the technological innovations that have happened over the course of history in Romania, I also see some advancements that happened on the political scene as well.
Yeah.
And there are two main periods of time that I mostly see, like when we started to become a kingdom.
Yeah.
And right before that with Cuza, and when he brought together Romania and in 7 years was able to just change society in a dramatic way. Like I believe that that's when we became a modern society as it is today. And the interwar period. Yeah. So in those cases, if you are to look at some personalities or some role models that have influenced how you, like, where you're getting your energy from, because that's what I see, and those are some role models that I also have when I look at the past and what Romania is in essence and how it can build on top of, no, not on top of, but through people that believe in what they do.
Well, I would start even earlier. I think that the first generation that really built Romania and built modern Romania was the 1848ers, Pașoptiștii. They were the first generation of Romanians to have the opportunity to go study abroad, work abroad, developed a new way of thinking, adopted new ideas, experienced all the changes that were happening in France, in Germany, in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, in Vienna. They came back, they failed, but they failed forward in a way, because while the 1848 revolution failed and they were exiled, they put up this massive lobbying campaign that essentially informed Western Europeans about Romanians and the idea of unification. So I think we know that in 1859, Moldavia and Wallachia came together to form Romania, and many people have said, well, yeah, we elected the same king, or the same ruler, I guess, Cuza, Alexandru Cuza, and they called it the politics of fait accompli, the politics of a given action, where we didn't wait for permission from anybody else. We elected the same ruler in both states, and that accomplished union. But it was not fait accompli. It was really a prepared outcome. From 1848-49 to 1859, all these Romanians went abroad and went to Paris, to Vienna, to Berlin, and lobbied for what Romania needs to become. I think the leader of that generation was Bălcescu. He died quite young, but he managed to bring Romanians together and created a lot of the ideas behind it, a lot of the history. Talked about Michael the Brave a lot, wrote a book on it, and so really consolidate the idea that we're all one people and should be one nation, one country. In the interwar period, one of my favorite figures is Ighe Duca. Brilliant man. He was essentially groomed by the Brătianu family to lead the party. The first Brătianu told him essentially, look, before he died, he said, look, you're brilliant. One day you will rule this party, but you can't do it yet. I'm going to pass it on to my son, Ionel Brătianu. And please respect that decision. You will be older and wiser when your time will come. Indeed, his time came. A bit later, he became president of the party. He became prime minister. He was shot by the far-right extremist movement in Sinaia in the train station. He never had any guards around him. Very humble man, but a brilliant policymaker. And he defined the ideas of what liberalism should be in Romania. He talked a lot about democracy and liberal ideas, rights for everybody. He talked about the importance of local capital, the Romanian economy. He talked a lot about strength and order, public order. We want to live in a society based on rules and rule of law, and about what he called social harmony. Some idea of social justice that was later on taken by the leftist parties. But anyway, these are two figures I would highlight.
We definitely dive deep into some role models here. So if we are to look at the present, especially with your past, for being former Minister of Digitalization, Innovation and Research, and now Minister of Energy, and with all your activity, what are some innovations that you are seeing today in Romania? How is Romania innovating?
I'll give you a specific example. When I was Minister of Research, Innovation and Digitalization, a group of young people came from Brașov to the ministry, and they had just won a competition in Vienna, I believe. They had built a virtual lab where you could assemble engines. And so they came and they gave me the VR glasses, and I was, transposed into that virtual lab and started building an engine. I remember my own classes in what we call, technical education, technological education. And, they would be reading from books or playing with some screws or different tools. But such innovations, this technology can really make a difference. I mean, imagine learning virtually, but hands-on at the same time, how to build different things or assemble different things. And the most amazing thing, these were very young people, so high schoolers, students, and they developed an award-winning innovation and something that also transforms our education system and forms the next generation of our workforce. So just one memory that comes to mind. Then in space, we have an amazing industry, and one of my proudest moments was the fact that we were able to pay back a debt that Romania had accumulated to the European Space Agency, and we were the only country in the agency's history that had not paid its debt and had our voting rights suspended. So I really pushed for it. The Prime Minister at the time, Mr. Ciucă, was very supportive. We paid a lot of money, I think over 130 million euros, if I remember correctly. Paid back everything we owed, gained back our voting rights, and were able to participate in the next project interval, let's say, the next project call that ESA would do. And I was in Paris, and everybody clapped for Romania that we were back in the club. And we are one of the first members of ESA. And indeed, that money actually goes back to Romania. So many startups in space in Romania are funded by ESA grants because Romania contributes that money. And they do quite cool things, like different electronic systems, different navigation systems, different wiring or designs. It's really a great industry.
Well, definitely. Like what I see is that creative fuel that exists, especially when you were mentioning students, high school,
right.
Like it's there. You can see the passion, the desire to create something. It's there. Now, if you are to look at what are the challenges or what's not going right or what we can do better, where would you look at, and what's like top of mind, the main reasons for why we are maybe not going at a higher pace? We are not accelerating as we could be.
Innovation.
Not saying that we're not, but like what could be some things that are holding us back?
In innovation?
Yeah.
Well, I hate to say it, but oftentimes it's been the politicians and the public arena, the public institutions that have held back innovation. I think that Romanians are by nature extremely creative and entrepreneurial, and it's I think, in our blood. It's in our history. It's in our decades of communism, when our parents and grandparents had to be very creative for basic things: securing food, securing car parts, securing gas, securing whatever, a trip to a different city. And you saw this, and you see it today, in places where the government steps out and just lets the private sector put these wheels in motion. Then everything happens beautifully. Where the government becomes a micromanager and starts playing with fiscal measures, additional taxes, different changes in regulation, the fiscal code, then all of that, I think, stifles innovation. So I would say we need a smart government, a minimal government, and one that only intervenes where necessary, where strictly necessary. We've been a micromanager and have failed to intervene where we should have really stimulated our startup ecosystem. So, for instance, one of the main hurdles in Romania's innovation system is the lack of funding for early phase startups, very early phase startups. Because once they become consolidated a bit, they can access EU grants, they can access different programs through different ministries and agencies. But in that critical high-risk phase of their growth, they don't have a lot of angel investors, they don't have a lot of access to capital. And so we looked a lot when I was at the previous ministry at the Israeli model, but it's the same model that was applied in Silicon Valley, in Ireland, and in many other countries, where the government has a fund matching mechanism. And we tried hard over 1 year to do this Romanian Innovation Fund. We didn't manage to do it in the end. We were in advanced discussions with the World Bank to help us design it, and hopefully those will lead somewhere over the term of the current minister. But essentially, if a startup secures $1 million from an angel investor, private angel investor, that is reputable, and you can have a list of criteria for what reputable means, then the government doubles that investment. So it essentially decreases the risk. And then, like in Israel, 5-6 years down the line, the entrepreneur can buy back the government's share with a minimum profit for the government, or a minimum interest rate, let's say, for that investment.
They're just like some convertible notes in a way.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. That has not happened yet. I think that needs to happen. And we need to do one more thing, which is to encourage product companies.
Yeah.
And I had that aha moment in Oradea 6-7 months ago when we visited two amazing companies, Romanian companies of 300-400 employees already. So not startups. But they were 100% product companies. And they told me, look, we understand that we need to stimulate the IT industry, but why stimulate everybody? Because it's one thing to export pure brains, so receive homework from a multinational in London or in Paris, and we just produce some output, some code, versus having our Romanian product that is then exported around the world.
Exactly.
And I don't think Romania has yet found a way to stimulate product-based companies, 100% Romanian.
That's of high urgency and high priority right now, I would say, coming from the industry.
Correct.
Like, we are losing our competitive edge that we had up until now when it comes to the IT industry. And I believe that all companies, at least majority of them, have become aware of this. And are acting and are strategizing in order to keep their competitive advantage, or pivot into new ways so that we can have a future for the IT industry. I'm certainly confident that we will have.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, like that's no question about it. And you were mentioning Israel and Silicon Valley. One key factor that I found there was their university and how they are involved in innovation. Like, they are active, and they are active not only from a ideation standpoint and innovation without commercialization. In my personal point of view, it's not yet real innovation. You need to be able to bring added value in how people solve problems in order to actually innovate. And that's when it's like a cherry on top of it. Like, it looks cool, it's really nice, it amazes you, but then you can integrate it in your day-to-day life.
You're right on, and Romania has struggled with this for many years. I remember when I started working at the World Bank, I saw a report in Washington in 2012 about Romania's research and development system. And beyond the fact that we were spending very little on R&D, and we still are, a vast percentage of that was dedicated to basic research, which is essentially producing articles, studying different things in the lab, zero practical applicability. Very little funding is for innovation that becomes commercial, that turns into a product that generates a lot of economic growth.
Exactly.
So we tried to stimulate that a bit through the National Research Plan and essentially award more funding to those institutes that have more IP applications, that have spin-offs. So they were part of the new set of criteria we designed to allocate state budget funding for R&D. And I think it's for the first time that this happened, that where the Ministry of Research essentially came in and said, we're going to award more money to those of you who actually have a focus on practical innovation, on new research that can actually lead to new products and services.
That's a pretty effective incentive.
Yeah.
Like just adding that metric of spin-offs that you get out of university each year. Like,
and we did.
Yeah.
And we did.
That's
again, these are long term, so it's hard not to regret a bit that we didn't have more time in the Ministry of Research, Innovation and Digitalization, because a lot of the things we set in motion will take 2 years, 3 years, maybe 10 years to really bear fruit.
Well, yeah, when planting seeds, especially if the fruits are meant to be with big changes, they will take time to grow.
Correct.
Okay, and let's think about the future a bit.
Yeah.
How do you see the future of Romania when it comes to innovation and in general, Romania? Like, I know you've wrote a book, Plan for Romania, and there are 7 revolutions, like how you've described them. There are 4 pillars on which Romania is built. And if you could tell us a bit more about what you see, what you have as a vision, with a focus on innovation, if possible.
And that's the first pillar. It's Innovative Romania in my book. So it's a simple conclusion based on centuries of economic theory. If you want to grow your economy, you have to invest in innovation, and you have to invest in endogenous innovation. Essentially, the key factor in economic development is productivity. What do you accomplish with the same unit of input, maybe our own labor? If you want to increase the output, then you have to innovate. You have to find new tools, new instruments, new techniques, new products, new services. And so if a country wants to grow its economy long-term, create jobs, create development, it has to prioritize innovation. That's why the most advanced countries in the world, Israel is number 1, but also the US, South Korea, Japan, they dedicate a lot of money to R&D. As a percentage of GDP, 10 times, 20 times more than Romania does, unfortunately. So I think you absolutely have to prioritize it. But I'm also very optimistic because it's going to sound, plain, but our biggest resource is our people.
It is.
And, as I often look at the charts of all-time rankings for Olympiads, it's simply dazzling that a country of 20 million people is top 3 in the world, maybe number 1 in math, chemistry, physics, biology, IT, so computer science, astronomics, whatever you call it. If it's usually a STEM, then we're there. So because we have this huge pool of talent, I think that's the main ingredient for leading the world today. And the fact that the world is so connected and no country has a monopoly on performance, on leadership, can mean that a relatively small country of 20 million people can be number 1 in the world. That should be our goal. And that's and I think that was the premise of your podcast, if we are to get there, the first thing we need to do is trust ourselves. Stop putting our heads down and letting others move ahead just because we don't have faith in our abilities. This is the time to act.
That's how it starts.
If we don't believe in ourselves, then who will?
First, you need to put it into thought, clear thought, confident thought. Then you put it into words, and then it comes into the world. And that's
right.
Yeah. We briefly discussed about the 48 revolution, and I see that pattern. I see a bit of that pattern now as well, especially if I am to tie it to what I've read about the book,
right?
About the first type of revolution, like the revolution.
Homecoming.
Yeah. How do you see? Like, what do you see as? What does Romania need to do now, or what we should focus on now in order to bring the talent? And
not screw up.
Yeah.
And again, the responsibility is on the public sector first and foremost, because I've been passionate about the idea of homecoming for many years. I've started the League of Romanian Students Abroad back in 2009, when everybody we talked to said, forget about it, nobody's going to want to join, nobody wants to come back, everybody wants to leave this country and be done with it. But we created an organization that at some point had over 35 branches around the world, students from over 50 nations, and I think 15,000 members in the diaspora. People just came together naturally, precisely because they did want to come back. They never forgot about Romania, most of them anyway. And when we did surveys every other year, we asked them, do you want to come back? What makes you want to come back? So on and so forth. And indeed, about a quarter were going to come back. They decided they wanted to come back. About half were undecided. And only about a quarter said never again. So, it's potentially up to 75% of all Romanians who leave, that are highly educated, highly entrepreneurial, creative, have at least the willingness to consider coming back.
That's promising.
It's promising, and it's also promising because we asked them, okay, but what would make you come back? And it's not salaries. It's decent living conditions, which is again up to the government to provide decent healthcare, decent education system, safe environment. We're a pretty safe country still. Highways, the basic standards of living. You do that, and I think that many Romanians will take a pay cut just to be home. And it's also because it's a growing country. It's a lot more exciting than the UK or the US or France or Germany, because we're doing things here. And Cluj is a lot more exciting than many other cities in the States that I've seen.
Well, I can definitely attest for that. Cluj is the city that made me stay in Romania and not want to go abroad.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And I increasingly see it around the country. Everyone talks about Cluj and Oradea, and for good reason. They're champions. But I see Iași coming strongly from behind, even Craiova. Constanța's about to go through a huge redevelopment effort. Piatra Neamț, my hometown from my childhood, is being reborn under a new public leadership, under a new mayor. Young guy, he's a personal friend, so I'm biased, but it's been amazing what he's done. So again, I think that many Romanians really want to come back. I think it makes sense for them from a business perspective to come back. From a personal perspective, it's exciting. The potential profits, the potential income is higher than in the States or in the Western Europe and more advanced economies.
Yeah, I'm really amazed by the healthy competition that started to show in Romania with what you mentioned, like more and more cities.
Yeah.
Like it's a healthy competition that's happening right now, and I think it's part of a healthy society. And
agreed.
The road we are going on, it looks pretty good. How does a day in the future look like for you?
What a tough question. I would see myself waking up and smiling and saying, this is the best country in the world. I don't want to leave it. I don't want to even consider leaving it. And I see myself and my kids and their kids growing up there. and so many different facets of it, from living conditions, properly built homes, properly insulated homes, energy efficient homes. And I haven't mentioned much about my current ministry, so I'll focus my response on energy. I think that the future is digital, decentralized, and decarbonized to the extent possible. So that means having solar panels, producing your own energy, also having a clear record of how much you consume. Also, think about this: like we could know that if you run your washer Saturday at 2 p.m. when there's a lot of electricity in the system but not a lot of consumption, you can get paid for it, or you pay very little for it. And so that real-time tracking of production and consumption could really be the energy of the future.
That definitely sounds like the Romania where I want to live in as well in the future. And what's your small piece of advice for our audience to get there, to get in that?
That's an easy one. I think I've said it before. Simply trust yourselves, then never give up. Never, never, never give up. And that's the key lesson I've learned in all my years abroad. You fail, you get back up, you dust yourself off, you try again. Try 1,000,000 times if you can. Learn from Edison, who invented the light bulb, speaking of energy, right? He said, I haven't failed 999 times. I found 999 ways that did not work. That's the attitude.
That's the mindset. Thank you for the inspiration today and the energy.
Much appreciated.